So welcome back, and we're now at session 3 for the Berrinba East State School Thrive program. Your student is Group A, which is the Year 4, the concept of bucket filling. There is a lovely book, which I'll put the link to in the description for a YouTube retell, about how we each carry an invisible bucket. So our invisible bucket aims to represent the general feeling of goodness within ourselves. And the concept of being a bucket filler or a bucket dipper empowers the students to understand that the things that they do have an effect on others around them. So when we were talking today, our Year 4s understood that being a bucket dipper is what happens when you accidentally upset somebody or when somebody intentionally tries to hurt another person. Unfortunately, we were able to experience what a bucket dipper was like with a couple of small issues within the group, and we got to really talk about how the concept of dipping into other people's buckets doesn't actually help the person who's dipping, and that in fact it empties out both buckets. And by the same idea, being kind and caring towards someone else can fill both people's buckets. We looked at tools as well, and I'm sure that you've heard more about the massages that I had in my lesson than anything else. So what we had was actually a small handheld massager, usually about $10 to $15 from the local electronics store, usually found in the bargain impulse bin on the way out the door. What we found was that the students really enjoyed this intervention as a tool, but it tended towards being a distraction. That's where we got into whether our sensory tools were a distraction or an on-task support. Distraction tools work when we are too far gone, when everything's gone pear-shaped and we need something to bring us back down problem so that we can actually think things through. Some of the teachers I got to speak to about how we might be able to get some massages in the room, and I will continue looking into that. Your student may be overly concerned about when that might happen, and I promised nothing, but suggested possibly by next term. We also looked at temperature. Being that most emotions come with some sort of temperature change, so your angry and excited extremes tend to come with a bit more heat, whereas your cold part of today's lesson was understanding what the cues are from our body around temperature. I'll include in the links a temperature game to do at home. It involves putting something metal, like a paper clip, in the freezer for a little while, and then feeling how the temperature differs between when you first pull it out and when you've held it in your hand for a while, so that we are cueing the brain into noticing those changes of temperature. One of the other interesting things we looked at was a bit of a spontaneous discussion about the things that go into making a perfect request for something that you like. We had the massager, and it was a hotly sought after item to break down asking for something that you want. We worked out that it's a bit like a recipe. First, you need to ask the person that has the item. If you throw in some manners, it'll increase the likelihood it'll come out good. We wait for an answer and accept that answer. That's the hardest part. If the answer isn't what you were expecting, then it's really tough to hold on to all those feelings that could come bursting out and choose a different response. So we talked a little bit about how we could work around it, but then one of our wonderful group members decided that he could see the difficulty the person was having and gave the item to that person. That was a beautiful way to resolve it, but we didn't get to try negotiation. That's a job for another week. Thanks very much, and I'll talk to you again next week. Bye for now.